Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast. I'm Clark Coffey, and with me, as always, is Mr. Cullen McFater. How are you doing, Cullen?
Good. How are you?
You're good? You're
Yes.
here? You had some bad eggs, and your stomach was a little...
Some Popeye's chicken and some bad eggs, yes.
but you've rebounded, and here you are. Well, good. I'm glad to have you. Today, episode 64, we're going to do something kind of unique, which I'm pretty excited about. Today, we're going to be discussing actually two films. Mm-hmm. We're going to be discussing 2022's Barbarian. So right off the bat, this is something new. We're going to be discussing a current, or I would still consider
a new
this
release,
current.
yeah.
People are still talking about it. It's on HBO Max, I think. People are checking it out still for the first time. So we're going to be discussing Barbarian, but we're also going to be discussing your film, the film that you had worked on. What was it? Did you work on that 2021, 2022?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wrote it in 2020 and we shot it in 2021, yeah.
Okay, so shot it in 2021. We're going to be discussing your film, and your film's title is...
Daylight Again.
Daylight Again.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're going to be kind of discussing both of these films in this episode is because, and I agree with you, Cullen, after having seen your film just this morning, these two films share a lot. They have a lot of similarities, and so I'm going to be really interested to kind of pick your brain on the creation, production of your film, and get your take on when you see another film that's had great success like Barbarian has, and it's so similar in so many ways to yours. Kind of like get your thoughts on some of that, what was that like? And, did you see things that you thought, hey man, I did that better, or the vice versa. Hey man, I wish I would have thought of that for mine. And we're going to get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about Barbarian first, kind of like we do on most of our previous episodes, but then we're going to kind of shift into this discussion of your film as well. So I'm really excited about this. A couple firsts for us here at the Soldiers of Cinema podcast.
Yeah.
So
and I just want to jump in real quick too and just say that because these are new releases, as you said, and we usually do older movies, we are going to be talking about these in detail and spoiling them and stuff like that. So especially with Barbarian, I saw Barbarian with no prior knowledge going in. I didn't even see a trailer. So this is a movie that I would definitely recommend seeing before you know anything. So if you're listening to the podcast, I think it's on Disney Plus or HBO or something like that.
Depends on your country. I think
depends on
it's
where
HBO
you are.
Max here in the States, Disney Plus.
But definitely, I would recommend watching it first. And then my movie, Daylight Again, is available for free on YouTube as well. It's under my YouTube channel called Postromo Pictures. So if you want to perhaps be a little bit more, in tune with our conversation today, pause the podcast, check out the two movies, and then come back. We'll still be here. Just wanted to say that because, again, usually we're reviewing kind of older movies and talking about older movies that have, been spoiled to death, whereas these two are quite new and recent. So I think for anyone listening, I'd recommend, go check them out and take a listen after.
Yep, and we can also, we'll put a link, Cullen, to your film in our description.
Sure,
So that just in case, if you're having trouble finding it, we'll just put the link directly to it in the description. So please check there. And I agree. It's going to be a lot better if you've seen this film. We don't want to spoil anything. And we'll just sit here and wait. We'll just be waiting in your phone or wherever else you listen to podcasts. We'll just sit here and wait patiently. I've got some snacks. I've got some water. And so, don't take too long though, because we've only can hold out for so long. But, But we'll be here when you get back.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
This is 476 Barbary, right?
Yeah, I'm renting this place.
No, I booked it a month ago.
Are you sure you have the right place?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do?
Why don't you come inside and we'll call these idiots. Why don't you just crash here?
Oh, no.
I don't know if you got a great look at this neighborhood, but I don't think you should be out there by yourself. dry and there's a lock on the door. By the way, I'm Keith.
Tess.
You take the bedroom, and I'll sleep out here on the couch.
God. Keith?
This process might seem overwhelming, but with a little practice, it can soon become a pleasurable experience. This is perfectly natural.
Barbarian was your pick. And I can definitely see why that was the case. But tell me a little bit about your first impressions with the film.
Yeah. So again, as I just said, I knew nothing about this movie. So it came out either, I don't know if it was when I was away. I was away for 3.5 months this summer. And so it either came out when I was away or just after I got back.
That was prison, right?
Yes. Yeah. I was in for tax fraud, tax evasion.
We're joking.
And I finally got back. Yeah, got out of the pen, and no, but it was interesting. It's like, yeah, usually I'm quite tuned into things like this and kind of know, especially a movie that's kind of up my alley like this. I would know about it going into it. And
now, are you a horror fan? Like, what's
yeah? No, I definitely like horror. I like high concept horror like this, especially. Okay. And so, yeah, I hadn't even seen a single trailer. I hadn't read anything about the plot. I literally had seen the poster and had a friend recommended that I, check it out. And they didn't tell me anything either. I went pretty much at the end of its theatrical run here, so I got to see it in theaters. Again, knowing nothing, the theater was mostly not filled, but there were probably 5 or 6 other people in theater with me. And I just was really, really kind of taken for a ride, which I think is very much intentional on Zach Cregger, who is the director and writer's part. He describes his writing process for this movie being something where he was like, I had no long-term plan and basically says that if I was surprising myself, then I was happy with it. And you can definitely feel that. I was sitting in the movie, and we'll get into more detail about this in a bit, but I'm sure you kind of had a similar experience, because I don't know how anyone wouldn't, where you're just, every time a new feature of the story is kind of unfolding, you're like, where the hell is this thing going? And so I really enjoyed it for that. It's not too often, unfortunately, these days where you go and see a movie that kind of takes you by surprise and kind of, you can't really predict where it's going and where it's going to end up. Yeah. And I love that feeling. I love not knowing what's happening. There's a great moment that cuts from one thing and then suddenly you're in a completely different location, and it's like, I guess the start, the opening really of the second act in a way. Yeah. And I remember when that happened, I laughed out loud audibly in the theater, because I just was like, I have no idea what's going on, in a very good way though, not in a negative way. So that was kind of my first reaction. I really liked it. Knew nothing about it, which was great, and I was really glad that I didn't, and had a great time with it.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, so I kind of a similar situation in the sense that I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I think I'd like seen the thumbnail, on a plane or something, but I've never watched films
Right.
for the first time on a plane because I refuse to watch. I refuse to watch anything like that on a tiny little crappy screen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I had seen the thumbnail. I kind of heard a little bit about it, that it was popular, that it was doing well. But I didn't know anything about the story. I didn't know anything about the filmmaker. I didn't know anything at all about it. And so it went through its theatrical run, and I didn't go see it. And then my brother I had apparently caught it on HBO Max out here, and he was like, "Hey, I think you should check this film out. I think you would like it." And so I ended up catching it, a couple days later at his referral, and so I watched it at home. I watched it alone. My wife refuses to watch horror movies for the most part, so I could not convince her to watch this with me. She was like, She took a look at the cover and the name, and she was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not watching that. I'm not watching that. So I stayed up late after she went to bed one night, and I watched it alone at home. Yeah, I mean, look, I think this film has a lot to like. I don't know if I'm in love with it as much as you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to kind of figure out an articulation of why that is.
Right.
The
Right.
movie is obviously very successful. It was extremely successful commercially, and it was extremely successful critically. I mean, I'm looking right now at Rotten Tomatoes, and it's got, a 92% tomato meter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hugely successful film. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that I think that it's a bad film, but I just don't know that I'm on the hype train that a lot of people seem to be on about this film. So, some of the things that I liked, like I think, for instance, like what you had talked about, you'd really enjoyed how we changed gears pretty radically, both like temporally and geographically in the film, where we're in the house, and it's this like Airbnb, confusion, and there's this, great tension, and it kind of plays up, the fear that a woman would have in this kind of situation. I think it did a really good job of illustrating that and really writing that tension and ratcheting that up. And then boom, now we're Justin Long's driving down the Malibu coastline or wherever he is, and and I just want to pause here and say for a second, I really love Justin Long in this film. I like Justin Long in general, but I really like him in this film.
Yeah. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he really is. Like when he was doing, I had like the ever so slightly tiniest little brush with him. When I lived in LA, I lived in Franklin Village, and at one of the homes that I lived in, I lived upstairs. This house was like divided into apartments, one downstairs, one upstairs. And he was like the friend of one of the people who lived downstairs. So he would like kind of come in and out. Unfortunately, this was when he was doing the Mac PC commercials, right? That's what he was mostly known for. Now, unfortunately, I never got to meet him, and I never got to, talk to him or anything. But anyway, there's my tiny, super little, ever so barely brief touch with Justin Long. But yeah, I love him in this, and I thought, that whole thing was good. And then we kind of, we go back to we're in the house in the basement, and then, at a certain point we jump to back in time, and now we're with another character, and then we come back to the basement. So I think that's interesting. But maybe as we talk through this, I'll kind of be able to find my way to articulate. There was just something, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, but maybe we'll find out. But it was, so again, I enjoyed the film, but I was far from being on the hype train that seems to exist for it,
Well, that makes sense because it was quite divisive for audiences, I will say. Like, you can actually see that the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is much lower than the critic score, I believe. I know I saw a lot of reviews of this of people being like, they don't get what the hype is and really not liking it. I don't, as far as I can tell, you didn't really not like it, but
no, I didn't like it.
I've seen a lot of people say that they like that it was awful and things like that. So it's interesting that that it did really kind of divide audiences. And of course, again, not saying that you're on that side of it, but it always fascinates me when you see a movie that kind of people there's a huge swath of people that really love it, and there's a huge swath of people that really, really don't like it. And perhaps we can figure out why that is.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, I didn't know there was such a division on it. I kind of felt like everything I had heard was really complimentary of the film and really, really loving it. So I actually didn't realize that existed. I mean, I think having, a really, people either really love it or they really hate it is usually kind of a good thing, right? Because I think that's indicative of a filmmaker who's made really strong choices. Either people really love those choices or they dislike them. But it's not a middling film. And I think, middling films are probably, the super inoffensive. They don't say anything. They have no opinion or perspective. They're super safe. Well, whatever. Yeah, it's oatmeal. So the cinematic equivalent of oatmeal with nothing in it, And I don't want cold oatmeal for my cinema experience. I definitely don't think that's this film. But yeah, I mean, let's kind of go into a discussion of it, and maybe maybe we can tease out some more of my thoughts here. Sometimes I just get that. I don't know about you, but it's like, as much as I love, obviously I love cinema, and obviously I enjoy talking about cinema, but I do find on occasion where, something just doesn't really press my buttons in exactly the right way. And it takes me a long time to kind of find my way to an articulation of why. It's just a feeling.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah,
and I'm just, because it's like it clearly, the technical aspects of the film are extraordinary. I think the soundtrack is great. I think the cinematography for the most part is good. Performances are good and fun. Again, especially Justin Long. So maybe. Well, yeah,
I do have to say that the one aspect that I think excites me the least about the movie is the cinematography.
Okay,
not that it's in any way poorly done. It's well done. It's not poorly lit or anything like that.
Right.
But I find that it doesn't really equal the creative trajectory of the plot. The movie
Tell me more.
Goes in all these different directions and kind of takes a lot by surprise and things like that. And the cinematography for the most part is pretty safe and standard. Like there's nothing really that crazy going on. And you think about something like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that, where you've got, this high octane 16 millimeter, like really kinetic camera. And it's just,
you're
crazy.
Almost every horror movie is going to lose in its comparison to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in my opinion. That's, so that's, but just to extrapolate a little bit off what you're saying, I did feel like there was a lot of redundancy. And, just as an example, I felt like, especially when we're in the house in that first act, and I know everybody, this is kind of nitpicky, but I think it aggregates to something. It's just like every single camera move felt to me like it was, we're pushing in on a dolly. Everything we're pushing, everything is like a slow push in.
Yeah, he cited Fincher for that, that he said that he wanted to do kind of like a Fincher thing for the upstairs. And everything's dolly, or everything's very like a still kind of slow pan over. Yeah. So it definitely, I found that was the side of the film that it excited me the least. And then even when they get down in the basement, it just kind of immediately switches from that to like just a lot of handheld and things like that. Like there's not a lot of.
Yeah, I guess, as I said, I feel like, this like repetitive, like kind of, maybe like overly self-conscious camera work in the beginning, like, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's like trying so hard to be somebody else, like Fincher, with this like really on the note, like this really pushy score. Now, it's not that I didn't like the score, but it's like really pushy.
Yeah.
It's like they're really trying hard, and I felt like sometimes they were trying too hard with the setup. Like, we really want you to be tense right now. We really, really want you to see that, this woman is in this like super tense situation, and we really want you to think this guy's bad. We really, really, really want you to think that this guy is going to hurt her. And I get it, right? But I guess at a certain point, I was almost like, I get it, guys. I get it. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
no, and I think that probably a lot of that comes from, and I agree with you. And I actually, like, I think that this, as a movie, it's far from perfect. I think the thing that I love about it is just that it really, it's one of those movies that kind of like masked its flaws with just kind of carrying me on the journey of the story. And I think watching it a second time, I was actually able to pick out a lot of the things that I didn't love about it, which was, thankfully
and again,
I did get to see it a second time.
And my point is not to like nitpick a film to death or anything. And I mean, if anybody's listened to all of our previous episodes, that's not what we do. I'm not here to like bash the film or anything. It's kind of like a post-mortem to try to kind of suss out. It's like, okay, you're sussing out choices,
Yeah, how'd you feel about it? Yeah.
Filmmakers ourselves, it's like we're trying to learn. So just to give some context, I mean,
I
don't
think,
ever approach it from the perspective of I want to beat up someone's film either. That's never ever, because there are really good things in it. So,
and I think the cause of that might be the fact that it was originally written as a short. And I don't know what the short, like what remains of the short, but if I had to guess, when you're doing a short film that's 20 minutes and the short film was supposed to just be that intro with the two of them in the house, and it was about a girl who goes to an Airbnb, it's double booked, and it's like a girl basically ignoring red flags of a situation. And so if I had to guess, the stuff that you're referring to and that I frankly agree with you on is likely a carryover from that, where it's like in a short film you have so little time to really establish those things, so you really have to drive them home immediately.
You gotta drive it,
and so it's like he makes her the tea, she doesn't touch it, then he waits for her to come out with the wine bottle, and it's like, I want, and he goes on that rambling thing. And so I can imagine that is something that, definitely kind of carried over. I don't know how the original short film was supposed to end, if he was actually supposed to be guilty in that and be a predator, or if
who knows?
He was.
It'd be interesting, and because I guess like I want, it's like music, right? It's like you don't want to hear the same tone over and over and over again, right? You want like a dynamic range in, you want the melody to shift some and then come back to a motif and then go, and I guess I just felt like it was just over and over and over, like the same thing. And I want to be kind of misdirected. Like, let me think he's a really nice guy for a second. And then, like push and pull. Don't it's just hitting the same note. So to me, I felt like it was however long that I don't know however long that act is, 15 minutes or something, I can't recall. It just did feel a little bit, and then there's some other things that it's like, I'm all for films who have a logic of their own. I totally am. And I'm definitely for films not having to be perfectly logical. And I mean, I love that films can embody like a dream-like quality and they don't have to make rational sense. I love all of that. But sometimes things just kind of stand out to me. Like I can accept some wackiness in some films, and for some reason I can't accept some wackiness in others. And it's like when she wakes up and she's like outside in the daylight for the first time. And it's like, this neighborhood is literally like apocalyptically horrible,
it's
right?
Detroit.
Like, right. And I don't know. I don't think it was really shot in Detroit. I don't think that's
so everything that's not on the street was actually shot in Detroit. So like as soon as she's walking the neighborhood, that was all real Detroit.
But it's like here's this perfect house that's supposedly owned by this TV star or movie star or whoever this guy is, right? I can't remember if he was in TV or film, but some known actor. Owns this like perfectly well-maintained home in a totally destroyed neighborhood that nobody in their right mind would ever go into, like a completely abandoned neighborhood. Yeah. Right? I'm like, these two people are going to Airbnb this house? You got to be shitting me.
Yeah. No, yeah, that it is kind of like they really drive the aspect of like this is an abandoned neighborhood home. Well, I mean, and I've driven through Detroit, and so there are certainly neighborhoods like that, but you don't see, again, like you said, there's not this.
So here's the question: why? Yeah. So here's what I want to ask. So because this is like what I do, because I want to try to like, okay, so why? What was necessary about that decision for the story to be told?
Like, I guess just the isolation element, just the idea that it.
But why? If you're trapped in a basement, aren't you isolated anyway? So I guess I've just, sometimes I wonder why. Like, why do you make me jump through hoops to kind of ignore things if you didn't have to? I don't, and maybe there is a good reason. I mean, maybe the filmmaker wanted to make a comment about the deterioration of neighborhoods, and or maybe it's tied into kind of, I don't know, I get the house thing. This is common, and with your film too, right? Where you have a pretty veneer, so you have this pretty home, you have a pretty exterior, and that's what's on the surface. So that's like the conscious, and then you have the subconscious, which is the scary, the dark, the cave, right? So you have happy, wonderful suburbia up top. You have scary, terrifying, horrible dungeon.
Yeah.
This is super. This is of course everywhere, right? This is heaven, hell. This is subconscious and conscious. So I get all that, but yeah, just tiny little things. It's like she steps outside, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like presumably that I don't know. I'm like, okay, so wow, this house is so popular that 2 people booked it.
Well, and so I think that's the one thing that I did kind of question the first time too, is like also when she goes to the interview with the woman that she's supposed to be working with, and she's like, the woman is adamant that she shouldn't be staying in that neighborhood, but then just kind of lets her go. And she doesn't. She's not like, hey, come stay with me instead.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of thing. Like,
or let's find you another place or anything.
And there's there's the conversation about like, there's a medical conference in town and that, but. Yeah,
it's
like
so
if I were
nose.
to, and though I will say the one thing that does work in its favor, and it's really a split-second moment, is when that first night when she realizes that there's no key in the lockbox, and she hasn't actually taken in her surroundings at all,
right?
And then she turns around and kind of looks around the neighborhood and sees that there's no lights on, that there's nothing.
Yeah,
that it does kind of hit you like, oh, that's a bit creepy. Like. You kind of feel like someone's watching her. But I think that, to your point, I think you could have had the same effect and just had it be a little bit less apocalyptic.
Or just have the Airbnb like in a rural area.
Yeah.
I don't know. But,
But then it would be too much like daylight
again. Okay, fair enough. And we will get to that. But here's another thing. Like, so you mentioned that interviewer. Why did that scene even need to exist?
Right,
why is that scene even in the film? Mm-hmm. I'm sitting there and I'm bored. Mm-hmm. I need to see her interview. Why?
Right. Yeah.
What relevance does that have to anything that happens in the movie? Did I might have missed it, but maybe
I
can help me.
I guess I mean the functionality is that she leaves the house and then comes back and she needs to have taken the key inside with the
See, that's what makes
guy
me crazy about
But
movies.
that's what I mean, yeah, like when you can read the plot function into.
This kind of stuff makes me crazy. And maybe this is I guess I feel like, so from my perspective, and it's only my perspective, and obviously there are many, many other perspectives and many other very valid perspectives. So this is just my opinion. Mm-hmm. I generally prefer my stories coming from a place of kind of the subconscious of the writer. And especially when it comes to horror, I really prefer my horror to be visceral.
Right.
And kind of primordial. And I don't mean in like the literal plot or monsters or something. I mean in the writing. I mean in, the point of horror to me is that it's a way to uncover and express the like deepest fears of humanity. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it's very difficult to do that when you're analytical about it and you're calculating about it. I feel like, at least for me. And I think
that definitely makes sense. Yeah.
And I feel like this film, and I know that you said like the writer didn't know where it was going to go, but I don't know that I feel that in the horror part of this. I can see that in kind of the plotting where it's like, okay, hard cut, we're in a totally different space with a totally different character. I can kind of see it, but I guess the film feels more conceptual to me than it does viscerally scary.
Yeah, well, what I think might, again, be something that, and this is all me guessing, but it could also, again, be the fact that because it was written as a short initially and it was just this thing, that what often happens is when you add so much on the end of a short and turn it into a feature, you then have to go back to the initial short and be like, wait, that doesn't make sense, and change all these things. Yeah, and put all these things in. And so I think that could be exactly what you mean. It's just that like he went back and was like, well, this doesn't make sense for that. This has to be here, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's also, there's...
And I don't know, I'm guessing, who knows? Yeah. And maybe, and obviously this is like very personal experience. I mean, I'm not even sure, but that that I'm kind of grasping here, but that's kind of maybe what it feels like a little to me, is that it's less kind of that nightmare kind of dream, kind of primordial, visceral fear that's deep inside of us. It's like versus kind of a conceptual, like I'm going to write a scary story and I'm going to,
and then fill in the blanks.
Calculate that, right?
Yeah.
No,
that makes sense.
I don't know. Yeah. So, but I could be totally off, right? If we had the director here, which would be awesome if we did, we could ask.
But
and
I think perhaps again I think that might be where our different experiences with the movie came from. Whereas I didn't find myself thinking about that at all the first time I watched it. I was just kind of like swept up in the trajectory and the momentum of the plot, and so I didn't even it wasn't even this time. It wasn't even until this time I watched it that I realized a lot of that stuff, or just the fact that like one of the first things she does in the movie is ignore a call from her boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend, which doesn't really come up at all again. And I think that also again likely is a holdover from the short film, which is like probably involved a
I could go out on a limb. I mean, I could kind of go out on a limb, maybe. I mean, thematically, I think we see some really like some themes here, right? Some thematic themes. And maybe that's a part of it, but we, obviously, like in the first act of the film, it's like, the film does a good job of kind of illustrating how men and women have to approach situations very differently, right?
Yeah.
That the man who's in the house is not scared of her. He's not afraid of her being a bad guy. He's not afraid of any violence being perpetrated on him by her, but she's terrified. And that's like what happens in the real world. Like that's how reality is for many people. Again, I'm not speaking for everyone, but I mean, in general, it's, I think it's much more common for a man to walk through life and not be afraid of situations like this as nearly as much as a woman might be, right?
Yeah, well, it's like he says in the movie, like if he had shown up to an Airbnb and a woman had been staying in it, he wouldn't have thought twice about going in and being like, I'll sleep on the couch, right?
So the film is like really working hard to express that, I think. And then I think the film works really hard to show Justin Long's character. As the big part of his character, of course, is this the sexual assault or abuse charge that has been brought against him. So it's a
and how he justifies it to himself,
and how he justifies it to himself, correct, and all of that. So we're pulling this thematic theme from the first act, and then of course what we find out is that there's a little bit of a bait and switch, and that the quote unquote mother, this kind of monster, so to speak, isn't actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
The bad guy is the person that we see in the flashback, and is the character's name Frank? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think Frank. Yeah,
Frank. We see him. He's kidnapping, torturing, presumably raping these victims who are women, and so that's what they've discovered in the house, and that's what Justin Long. That's who he bumps into, and he sees all these VHS tapes of the recordings of these horrors. So. And then of course we kind of come back to the end, and Justin Long fails to be a protector or even a reasonably honorable person, and is like totally willing to sacrifice the main character for his own life, right?
Yeah. Well, you also have the moment that Justin Long sees the recordings of all of these horrible assaults, and we don't see them, but he turns around and is like, "You're a monster. So it's definitely not light-handed on its commentary.
Well, so clearly the writer is writing this with like some strong narrative or thematic theme, themes that are traveling through the whole film. So I don't know if the call from the boyfriend is a part of that thematically, if maybe there's a hint that because of the context that it's in, she's obviously in another town, maybe she's moving away, she's trying to find a job at another place where she doesn't live. She's not taking a boyfriend's call. I'm assuming that this is an unhealthy relationship, or one that she doesn't want, or one that she's trying to get away from. So, there's like a pretty consistent narrative here thematically. So that, at least that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think that again, My curiosity is, I wonder if in the short film version, if that came back in a larger way, or if that was just the same, or if that maybe it was an addition to the feature. And that's one thing that I always, that it's like the double-edged sword of speculation, is that I would love to read the short film and see what carries over.
I couldn't even find the script, because even the feature script, I couldn't even find it. So
but we won't get into this yet. But just because Daylight Again also was based off of and started as a short, so it is interesting.
Yeah.
To
let's
see,
talk a little bit about that. So I mean, obviously, like we said, you can go watch this for free, and I highly recommend you do so. I think it's a really entertaining and fun watch. So please take advantage of that opportunity. And if you haven't done so up until this point, pause, do so, and come back, because we'll probably have some spoilers here for Cullen's film. So, this is a really cool opportunity, Cullen, because obviously you've got some inside information on this film, I'm imagining, since you wrote it
just
and
a little
directed
bit.
it. So tell me about, I'm really curious kind of now in the context of having, just made this feature. When you saw Barbarian, what did you think? Were you like, oh my gosh, this is my film, or this is whoa, this is so close, because I've seen both now, and it's wow, there's a lot of similarities. So
and they're primarily, I think, surface level similarities, which is less suspicious to me. But no,
fun.
It didn't bother me in the slightest. It was actually a lot of fun, and I think, again, maybe one of the reasons that I had so much fun with the movie was because I knew nothing. I didn't know that going in.
Yeah.
And yet, down to the costumes, the outfit that Tess wears in Barbarian is almost identical to the outfit that, there's a shot of Tess, walking down a stairwell, and it's the exact same thing in Daylight Again. And so I thought it was honestly really, really funny and really almost excited me about the movie, because it was almost like seeing a different version of the movie, and being someone that kind of has a similar idea, and where do they take it? And it kind of felt like a weird exercise when you give I used to do this when I taught film classes, where you give 3 different groups the same script and see, or the same pitch, premise, and they see where they go with it.
Yeah.
And so it was funny seeing that, and there were things that I really appreciated about Barbarian that I think I didn't do as well. I think Barbarian gets right into the meat of it much quicker than my movie. And of course, we're discussing right now too, the version that you saw was the final cut, which is very, very different from the theatrical cut that actually was shown at the premiere. There's huge differences.
Yeah.
So even the original theatrical cut takes there's a 20-minute introduction that takes place before they get to the house. But
let's dig into some of that. So,
sure.
I mean, let's go back a little bit. I mean, obviously we can only speculate about, the writer of Barbarian and kind of how that process went, extrapolating from just small little pieces that he shared, in Q&As or whatnot, in articles. But, tell me about a little bit about the conception of your piece then, right?
Sure.
So what were you striving to do? What were your inspirations? And kind of just summarize in a nutshell, just in case people don't have an opportunity to see it, or maybe that, kind of summarize kind of, what that story ended up being. If you would.
Yeah, mind. I can go right from essentially the beginning, which is that a friend of mine approached me with an idea for a short film called Hector. And so his original idea, it was actually a short film that he had shot himself, and wanted to redo because he didn't really like how it had turned out. And it was basically about this person that is in this house that he doesn't know. He's staying at a cousin's house, and there's a monster in the house, and he has to he basically does the childlike thing, which is he holds the blanket over his head and hopes the monster will go away, but it actually works. And the monster, it's the one defense against the monster is that it can't get through blankets. And it's kind of, I think it was only 3 or 4 minutes long. And
it
so
can't
then we
go through blankets.
Yeah, and it was this little silly thing, and so then I was really interested in it, but we had some time. I think we shot it at his parents' house initially, and then we had about a month and a half before we could shoot there again, because I think they were doing renovations or something. And so we were like, well, let's actually take this and kind of maybe expand it and change it, and it changed pretty drastically into the short film Hector, which I think turned out about 10 minutes long. And so that one's about this guy who goes to his cousin's house and his cousin's not there. And his cousin's like, I'll be there tomorrow, but, meet my roommate Hector. He's there. And just, and there's like a list of rules about like, don't make too much noise, don't touch the thermostat, blah, blah, blah. And he goes in and he immediately is kind of an asshole and he kind of breaks all the rules. And so the plot is set up as this sort of like in-house horror thing, but it's like, it's a bit of a comedy because it's just kind of about roommates having difficult growing pains together. But you never actually see the other roommate and you're like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And then it gets a little bit creepy. And then the ending, the twist is that it's actually like a Wendigo, which is this monster, and that the roommate is dead. And it's been this Wendigo that has been kind of pissed off at him the entire night and eventually doesn't even kill him, just throws him out because he's like, you're breaking all the rules. And so a little bit more comedy.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, we decided that we were going to write a feature. And so we wrote two other ones that kind of ballooned in budget. And then I said to Michael, I was like, why don't we take Hector and turn that into something? Because that could be done on a really low budget. It's basically one location and we can kind of keep that and maybe just expand a few of the characters and things like that. So the original drafts of Daylight Again were much more similar to like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like it was like this kind of Sam Raimi-esque high octane
like
kinetic horror action with a lot of gore, with these big set pieces, and many more characters and things like that. Like there was actually another person living in the house named Jackson, who was kind of the primary conflict with Artie, who was the main character originally, the man. And then we just kind of realized like, okay, this is going to be way too complicated. We had no money. So we were like, this is going to be too complicated. We can't afford this many actors. We can't afford this many special effects.
Right.
So let's pare this down. And one of the ways that we did that, and it was a friend of mine, Mandy, who actually kind of made this recommendation, was she was like, well, a way to raise the stakes is to make the main character a woman. Because a woman being in a house with a man alone is a lot different than like a man going to it.
Yeah. Well, and let's pause. I want to pause for a second because I think this is really important, right? This is an extremely important trope in the genre of horror film, right? Mm-hmm. That the victim is often right. There's the last girl, right?
Yeah.
This is like a known thing. Victims are often women, and it's a big part of horror. And I think this is partly what we're starting to see is, twists on that, or, different takes on that trope, as our culture, as culture shifts, and as our cultural awareness and like just, culture in general shifts. But I think what you just said is important. And I mean, and it speaks to kind of what I was just saying, right? That it's like in Barbarian, we're really shown very specifically how different a woman has to move through these situations than a man, right? And that's kind of what you just were, kind of illustrating too, is like, well, look, if you want to raise the stakes, then you put a woman in the situation, and an audience is automatically, instantly, subconsciously going to understand that character is at greater risk than if they were a man, which is unfortunate, obviously.
And the character is going to know that too, right? Like they're automatically going to be more suspicious. And and so it was actually a really interesting switch. But they were also they were still cousins. Like Maggie, who turned into Maggie from Artie, were still cousins, Per and Peter. And it was still primarily centered around Peter being out of the house for the most of the movie, and he just kind of comes into the third act, and it was about this dynamic between Maggie and Jackson, who don't know each other at all, who really don't get along, and then there's obviously all these secrets about, spoiler, the cannibalism and all that. And Hector was in the basement. And so it still was just, again, I still couldn't figure out how, without any money, we were going to do this. And so I thought, okay, let me just take like a break from it for a moment, watch some other stuff, spend a month just like taking in other types of thrillers and things like that. Because again, we'd been looking at a ton of Tobe Hooper, Sam Raimi, all these, that sort of thing.
What ended up being like some of the biggest inspirations for you?
So I watched, the biggest change was when I watched Rebecca, the Hitchcock film Rebecca.
Okay.
Which was really kind of a light bulb moment for me, because it already has a very similar premise to Daylight Again, which is that a woman is like basically married into this mysterious man's house with this big he's got this big house on this, I don't remember if it's an island or if it's, I think it's just like an isolated house on some peninsula in like New England or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's England, I can't remember. But, and then she kind of uncovers all these secrets about him that he like, oh, maybe he murdered his wife. Maybe he, there's all these elements it's based off of the novel and this very thrilling mystery done by Hitchcock. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can make these more frightening elements, or like the things that were very visceral and gore heavy and kind of action oriented, maybe I can turn those sort of more into the psychological thriller element. But it still, to me, didn't make sense that they were cut. Like I didn't like the idea that they were cousins, Peter and Maggie. And I also was like, well, it's difficult to juggle Jackson because he's just kind of this interim character that, why is he there? And so then I rewatched, I should say, Phantom Thread, the Paul Thomas Anderson film. And that was another light bulb moment where I was like, well, why don't I just completely cut this Jackson character out, turn Peter from her cousin to like a former lover that she, had a fling with 5 years ago, kind of like a Bonnie without her Clyde in a way, and turn it into this kind of what starts as this sort of drama romance, kind of like, Hitchcockian Phantom Threadish, romantic kind of thing, and then that slowly turns into this thriller. And so the original cut of the film, which is 15 minutes longer, which is actually available online on my website, but it's not on YouTube, that version really spent a lot more time in kind of the more romantic elements of it. Like it opens on this
I was curious about that.
Yeah.
I was curious, yeah.
Yeah, so
and
it opens with them
that...
kind of meeting and all this stuff. And
now,
meeting
was there
after
more
5 years,
specificity
blah, blah, blah.
to their relationship in that? Because obviously in this final cut, or this latest cut, I don't know what you call it, what you're calling it, but in the cut that you've shared on YouTube, the one that I watched, that's barely over an hour, so it's very short. There's not a lot of specificity, at least that I picked up, right? It's like we only get these like small hints that they, and it kind of unfolds like later in the film, right? We don't learn the context of their relationship very well until we're into it, that there was like and it's just kind of in, they speak kind of to each other vaguely enough because they aren't saying specifically, they're not having to speak specifically about things that they know. But as an audience, we're just kind of getting little pieces, right? Where, okay, they did have a history. Okay, they were romantic. Oh, okay, maybe they were involved in like crime together or something, right? But we don't learn these things, and we don't really know like has she left her home, and why is she kind of hiding out here in his home? Like we don't know the specifics of any of that. Tell me about that choice.
Yeah. So the opening of the film was actually originally the scene with her mom in the kitchen. Yeah. That is now a flashback.
Right.
So the film originally opens with that, and so we're immediately given the context that she is on the run from the police, or that she's wanted because her mother has that very distinct line of like, turn yourself in. And so we know from the get-go that she's wanted. And that was kind of a balancing act. I kind of had to sacrifice, like I wanted that information to be revealed at the beginning, but at the same time, I felt for the sake of the story and just for the progression of the plot and that it mattered more to me to get more quickly into the house. And if, in fact, a friend of mine, his major note that he kept kind of saying to me that I agreed with was just like, is there any way to just get to that house and just open on the house? Yeah. And so I had to kind of sacrifice the larger context of her being on the run to relegate that to sort of a more flashback element later. Yeah. But then after that, a scene that's not anywhere in the movie, she winds up she's at a store and she's getting materials because basically she's going to have to sleep in her car because she has nowhere to go. And Peter bumps into her at the store, and they have this whole conversation outside the store about like how things are going, and he asks her to come up to dinner with her up to where he lives, and she refuses and sort of says no, it's okay. And so there's this kind of like brief little conversation that they have that gives hints and kind of explains her situation more, that she's like really got nowhere to go, and then her car doesn't start, and he drives up and sort of says like, your car's not starting, like why don't you just come stay with me, kind of thing. And she gets kind of
now
whisked
she has
away.
no choice.
Yeah, and so while those things were like technically in a plot sense more like relatively important in that like, oh, we're establishing the setting and why she's there and things like that, I just sort of, again, I weighed my options and went like, okay, what's more important, giving this really like kind of a little bit more detail into the context of the situation, or just, you know,
right
cutting the fat and getting it right in. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think you were right.
Still,
yeah,
and there still are more, like you said, there are hints to things throughout that, you know, it's never even in the full extended cut really explained like fully what they did. I wanted to keep that vague specifically because there was a point where I was like, okay, maybe we'll have this element where she's like really guilty about it. Like maybe she accidentally killed someone or something like that. And like, that's it. And then I was like, no, that's taking too much away from, it's too distracting from the point of the movie. And B, I didn't want to make her she already is not designed to be super sympathetic. Like you're almost supposed to trust her as little as you trust Peter in a way, a little bit more than Peter obviously, but she's not designed to be this like darling angel. Yeah. And so I didn't want to risk having her have done something really bad that would then just turn the audience against her. So I kind of intentionally left it to like, they kind of did some fraud stuff and ripped some people off.
And
like,
that's kind of the impression that I think came across because, you know, and that's just in casting and kind of, you know, behavior of the actors and the look of the actors. I mean, I don't look at these two people and think these are hardened criminals who are murdering people. Like that's that's just not what I see, you know, at all. They're younger, they're clean cut, they're good looking kids, you know, they just don't, you know, they don't impart that. That's not, it's not the impression that they give from casting. So,
well, and it's even, I think one of the interesting things too about doing like how drastically the movie changed from the theatrical cut to the final cut, is that I got to play with like what a lot of people I think that maybe aren't involved in filmmaking don't realize is how significantly not only a story can change through editing, but how you can actually alter the motivations of characters and alter things that are going on just by changing the context of something. So in the original theatrical cut, Sammy, who's the guy that comes home with them from the bar, there's a scene where him and Maggie actually have a conversation in the bar before Peter comes over and sort of says like, oh, what, like, you know, come back to our table and join us for a drink kind of thing. And so it becomes a little bit more obvious that like Peter was kind of orchestrating them to get together and to have that element happen where he's at the house and then you know. And I cut that out just mostly because I just didn't actually like the scene where they had the conversation very much, but also I found that as soon as that switched, it kind of put us in Maggie's shoes a lot more, where you sort of feel like, oh wait, while she's in the bathroom, Peter's gone and just brought this guy to their table, like what's going on, and you're kind of left in the unknown like Maggie versus her kind of bringing him over herself.
I mean, in a parallel, you know, it's kind of parallels the theme that I talked about, the kind of that I felt from Barbarian. I mean, it's, you know, the male lead is pretty douchey guy, and you know, he speaks for the woman, he makes decisions for her. She doesn't, you know, she'll be asked a question by another character and he will answer for her. You know, it's like, you know, it's very clear that she's uncomfortable about having this third person invited over to the house, but you know, she's not even asked until after the guy's been invited. So then it's, you know, what is she supposed to do? You know, I hate it when, you know, it's profoundly disrespectful when people do that, you know?
And so I really wanted in the writing process too, to make that so that like, it's not ultimately super clear. It's not just like the script staring at you, but that like every single little element of that you just described is like kind of in Peter's grand design, that he wants to piss her off so that she will have this conversation with him upstairs, so that Hector can come upstairs and, you know, bring the guy downstairs and kill him and all that. So
interesting. So could I share with you, because like from when I watch it, I'm just kind of like, oh, this is who this guy is. Like when I'm watching the film, right, as an audience.
Oh yeah,
I'm
there's
like,
definitely
I'm just
it's
like,
definitely
well, that's who this guy is, right? You know, he's like, this guy kind of talks for women. He, you know, doesn't ask for her opinion, you know, and they were even a couple before. So I'm like, wow, I can see why this woman would not want to be with this guy. He's not a very nice dude, you know. That's like as an audience, right? And because I don't know anything about Hector yet. I don't know anything about that. So
yeah,
I'm like,
because
in my mind, I'm like, wait a minute, what? He like brought this other guy over, and he's asking him if he finds her attractive, and I'm like, what? Like, this guy is horrible.
And that's and so yeah, that's definitely, it is certainly a part of like that. That's what he's like. It was also kind of fun because I got to, like, he is obviously way overconfident. Like, he has a lot of like, you know, he's not dumb, but he overestimates his ability to kind of win her over in that way. And which is ultimately his downfall, because I think that, like, you know, at least from my writing angle, and me and Devin talked about this a lot, who plays Peter, which is just that, like, he expected Maggie to be all over him, to you know, and he kind of plays this hard to get element where it's like, oh, you're going to sleep in this other room, like, I'm not making any advances on you, and kind of like, so she's confused about all this stuff, and so his whole thing is like, okay, she's going to be really into me and want to, you know, join me on this endeavor again.
So tell me about this. So, you know, again, kind of like paralleling this to Barbarian, right? So you've got this man and a woman, they're in a house, and there's kind of, you know, there's this tension, and, you know, and kind of the different experiences that men and women have in these situations, and there's lots of parallels there, right? Then we have something going on in the basement in both films, right? And I, by the way, I think like the location that you had, I'm assuming that was a totally different place, that wasn't obviously under that house, but it's an amazing location. It was great. It was well shot, and I really liked it. But so many similarities to the underground tunnel kind of stuff in Barbarian. but what I want to talk about is, okay, you know, we talk about in Barbarian where there's like this huge shift in you know, where there's this like very, very quote unquote dramatic and normal situation that anybody could imagine experiencing, right? Where two people have been booked for the same Airbnb, and we have kind of a similar thing going on for you outside of, you know, she's on the run from the law and they were like Bonnie and Clyde, but you have a man and a woman with kind of like a strained romantic history, and they're kind of navigating that tension in the air in between them in a confined space in a house. Everybody's experienced that, you know, I mean, whether it was a significant other, you know, that you were just dating, or a wife or husband, or, I mean, we've all been there where there's some strain or conflict in a relationship at a moment when you're navigating that, right? But then we go downstairs. I want to know where you had the idea, the impetus, at what point in the writing process were you like, and I want you to tell our listeners what you put downstairs, okay? Because we haven't talked about that yet, and the direction that goes to, but what was the impetus for that? Where were you like, okay, I've got these like two people, and they're normal, and they're going through a relatively normal thing, slightly heightened dramatically because of like this criminal history, but for the most part, very normal. And then the downstairs. Tell me about that, because I'm super curious.
So that actually kind of in the opposite order of Barbarian, I guess. That's what came first. Like, we knew that was when we were writing it.
So tell the audience. So that's why it's called Hector. That's why the first one's called Hector.
Yes, the original film is called Hector, which is what it's based off of, the short film. And this is Daylight again, of course. But this character Hector. So essentially, the twist, the third act twist, when she gets downstairs, is that she assumes this third roommate Hector is somebody that has like mobility issues, or like, you know, severe. You know, like was in an accident or something like that.
And we've been told that in Daylight again, right? The guy's like, hey, like this, there's somebody down there that's kind of funky, or I forget exactly what he says, but we kind of get the impression that it's like somebody's, you know, I don't know what we got down there,
sick or something,
weird, and we hear like chains rattling or something. And it's like, I mean, I don't know anybody that would keep a a differently abled person in the basement in chains.
Yeah, exactly.
And not be a horrible person.
Yeah.
So it's not like I feel any better about him from his description. I'm like, this dude is freaking horrible, man. You know?
Yeah,
I mean, I hear chains down there. What? You know?
And so and then we get down there and it's revealed that there's this kind of feral man living down there who like is the collector of victims and butcher and all that, because
now tell me the story of Hector. I want to know what's behind that more. So Hector's in this dude's basement, or it's like a dungeon. The way you've got it in the film is like this hallway, and there's like rooms, or it's almost it's like there's like a slaughterhouse. Tell me about that and the slide projector. What images are on the wall? Like, where did this come from? Like,
so a lot of those elements were like things that remained despite the budget being so low, and things that like Hector in the original drafts of the screenplay was a more specific character in that, like, he was kind of the third roommate. He was a little bit less feral.
Why is he feral?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like
inquiring minds
it's
want
kind
to
of
know.
In the original drafts, it's more that he's just kind of this like abused little guy that the other two take advantage of and chain up in the basement, and has gone insane from that, right? And so the slide projector, was like the original element of that was that it's supposed to be like that's his only entertainment, and that's kind of what he looks at as, he just spends his entire time listening to that and listening to the really loud music that plays. And there was originally going to be this whole element on the slide projector of like smut films playing and like people being chained, and so that it makes him almost like enjoy that. And so when she's chaining him up, we were going to have like him actually enjoying that.
Why did you not do that? Why didn't you do that?
We just didn't have the projector that we had. We couldn't afford a better one. It was way too dim to even display images really. And B, we didn't have any real time to like shoot the images that we would have wanted to be on there. So it just kind of had to be simplified.
Just logistics, just budgetary.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I say, and just to clarify, it's like, because my barometer for like, oh, that's good, is that when you say it, I'm like disgusted, right? So you say it, and I'm like, there's like the pit of my stomach. I'm like, oh, it's like nauseating to think of that.
And so I wish that we could have explored that more. Like, I wish I do, because I really liked those elements. But I decided to kind of leave the projector and as a little hint to that, and just sort of set like this. Well,
it still was nice. I mean, it's nice as a visual element right off the bat, right? So it's a great it's great just logistically from a lighting perspective. It makes that room look really great. It worked really well, and even though you couldn't go deeper into what that was doing, at least I was still like, ooh, I mean, I got a hint, I got a hint of that, right? It was intriguing, and I was like, what's going on? So I felt like that was a great touch. I mean, I think that whole basement was shot really well, the dungeon stuff, but it would have really been fun to have seen what you could have done if you had more money. That would have been great.
Because I mean, the original ending too was like, so there's the basement scene. And what's funny is that in a way, it's sort of, there's like in Barbarian, she's climbing out of the window to get out of that basement window at one point. The original way that sequence ended in the original draft was that Maggie rips open a window well, and that's what blinds Hector, and he sort of falls back and recoils from the light, and then she crawls out of it, and then there's a whole set piece afterwards in the woods where Peter's chasing her with a knife. Or with a pitchfork, I think he had, and Hector's out there too. Like, they're both chasing her in the woods at dawn.
Oh, so speaking of, I enjoyed your cameo, and I felt like it was like an homage to Hitchcock, or because I know that you love Hitchcock, and you just admitted that it was inspired, at least in part, by Rebecca, Hitchcock's 1940 film. So I did. I liked that very much, Cullen. That was awesome. That was fun to see you there. But I what was I going to say? I don't even know. But in your mind, did you have something that represented? So I'm always kind of curious, kind of the way my mind works. And I'm not suggesting for a second has to be the way your mind works or something. Everybody's got a different process. But I kind of work so symbolically. Either in my writing or maybe sometimes it's after the fact. I kind of write something. It comes from somewhere. I don't know where it comes from, and then I have to kind of work backwards to figure out like what was this? What does this mean to me? Why did I write it? Why if I took the time to sit down in front of a virtual digital piece of paper and write this, like it has to mean something, doesn't it? It's mean something. Like why? Why is this scary to me? Why is this what I put there? I was just curious, kind of what your thoughts are. Like, why cannibalism? Why this feral guy in a basement? Even if you maybe didn't think about it analytically, consciously when you wrote it, what do you think about now? Either or,
so
or both.
It actually all kind of came from an image.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go on a short tangent here for a second.
Yeah, do it.
Which is that when I was delivering pizzas, there was this one guy that used to. And this is right, like the year I graduated high school, I delivered pizzas for a year. There was this one guy that used to always order pizzas, and he was just like the creepiest dude in the world. It was the only house on this street that had never had any lights on. He would always request that you would go down into the backyard and deliver from the back door, which was down like a slope. And so,
dude, this sounds like you're going to be murdered. Yeah,
no, I know.
I can
and
see
so
why you would be scared.
Door was on the basement because it was on this slope, so it was like the basement kind of opened up into the backyard.
Yeah.
And so I remember the first time I went down and knocked on the back like door window, which is like a glass sliding door. And I'm looking at this room, and there's this TV, and I can just see the TV light flashing on this couch, and everything else is dark. Just the TV light. The room is just illuminated by this TV, and the couch is empty to my eyes.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the couch starts shifting and moving, and this man like grows out of this couch and and it was just the most unsettling image. And I was like, that's really weird, and that has stuck with me since that happened. And it almost reminded me of not the lighting or anything, but in Nosferatu, Herzog's Nosferatu, when Kinski kind of floats into the room and he's got like his elongated hands. It's really weird.
And do you know what else it reminds me of? And I don't know because I feel like, and maybe this is even connected to Nosferatu, but Halloween, Carpenter's original Halloween, where we have Jamie Lee Curtis's face in the foreground, and in the background we have like a couch, or it's like a living room, and Michael Myers just like rises
just
like
up.
straight up. And it's like the physicality of the way he rises up is almost like a floating.
It almost feels like animatronic in a way. It's like this uncanny movement. And so that image stuck with me for 8, and I was like, I've got to include that in a movie somehow. Someday. And so that was really the spark of it. Was just I was trying to figure out what, like, I had this image in my mind, and so that initially became the first shot of Hector when he's kind of crawling out of the shadows and you can't really see him on that first when
now
she first
and the
gets
cannibal
basement.
part, I mean, was that like, okay, I've got to have him do something or be something that's scary?
So that wasn't that came from, in the original short film, there's nothing to do with cannibals at all. It was just a matter of, I think we had been looking at Texas Chainsaw and things like that, and we were like, well, we need we kind of thought that the element that made us laugh the most about Texas Chainsaw was that they almost had this like cannibal business.
Yeah,
and so we were like, well, what if we take that
chili? Like they won the chili cook-off or something, right?
Yeah. And it's like, well, what if we kind of take that to the next level and have like these 3 roommates that like each of them has a different role in this business. And so Jackson's role initially was like the cook. Peter would go out and he was a real estate agent, and he would bring people into these like places, and they would get killed there. And so there was this whole business going up, and that still is kind of alluded to in the movie when like the guests are over, and then the one guest is like, when's your next buy time? And so once you kind of see it and realize that they're cannibals, it kind of makes sense that, oh, those people are buying human meat. And so, but that was kind of the interest for us, was like this funny idea of like this cannibal business and like this like at home, just family business of cannibals, very, again, similar to Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
And so again, because that original script too was a lot more funny, like it was a lot more Sam Raimi in that way, where it was like fun and exciting and
over the top and
so we were just throwing all these things, and we were like, well, what if this happens and this happens, and what if there's just like a butcher's table in the basement with all this meat on it, and which of course is still in the final movie, And so I think that it kind of, again, went through this odd, sine wave of like going really over the top and then having to get, pulled back due to
Pulled
budget.
back,
But again, those scarier elements to me are just, there's like, I don't know if you picked up on it, but there's the way that I shot the first, 3 or 4 minutes of her in the basement is just alien. It's just Ripley and Alien going down the hallway with a low camera on a dolly looking up at her, kind of silently walking through these hallways. And in fact,
I didn't make that conscious connection, but I can see that now as you describe it. I didn't like say, oh, this alien shot, but
yeah, and in the original cut of the movie too, not the one that's available online, but like my first rough draft, I actually had the alien alarm, like the Nostromo alarm sound going off the entire time she's in the basement. And that became the song that Hector uses later, which that song was originally going to be through the whole scene, but I found that it just kind of wore itself out if it was too long, so I had to start at the end when the projectors knocked over. But yeah, it was originally going to be this, like, there's something really scary to me about like being in a dark hallway with blaring noise and you can't hear anything coming up on you. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so that, it really, again, the movie really revolved around that final set piece, and it basically became the writing became a matter of like, how do I get these people to that
how do you get there? So riddle me this, Batman. Now that you've seen Barbarian, I don't know why. I feel like my dad used to say that to me when I was a kid.
I say riddle me this a lot.
So props to my pops. But my parents had some fun sayings. But yeah, that's anyway. So riddle me this, Batman. After having seen Barbarian and gone through the process, of not just one but two cuts of your film, like, what do you feel like you and you had mentioned this earlier. This is what put this in my head to ask. What do you feel like Barbarian did where you're like, oh, I wish I would have done that? Were there any moments like, oh man, you'd kind of hinted that maybe there were some pieces that you thought you could have learned from Barbarian, maybe for if you were going to make the film again, kind of thing?
No, I think that there's a few things. Yeah. So in terms of the basement, I think that the energy that Barbarian has in the basement is more exciting than what I have. Like, I think that
there's some great editing. I do want to say this. I real quickly, sorry to interrupt, but
no worries.
There's some great editing in the tunnel scenes when characters are being chased. It's hard to catch because the cuts are kind of matched to the flickering light. Right? It goes light, dark. I can't remember exactly. I don't know if it's like a flashlight's being shaken
the flashlight's
around
malfunctioning or
but
something.
But the cuts are almost, but not quite hidden in that flickering light source, so that they're kind of almost halfway hidden, so that it's like a stutter effect. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And it extremely effective, very good editing. But
sorry. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that like I would have loved to. In the script, that basement scene is much more expanded, much bigger. But that entire basement set piece was shot in about 6 hours in a single day.
Yeah.
I just couldn't afford more time. So I had to simplify it as much as possible. That is one specific thing is I wish I could have brought back that kind of high octane energy to the basement and expanded that set piece. The other thing is, and I tried to do this in the re-edit, but establishing the kind of uncanny dangers of the situation a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I think because it went through that kind of phantom thread phase with like a lot of the romance, and that's what the script was.
Yeah. Okay.
There's kind of a 10-minute break where it is sort of more focused on them as characters and their past and their history and their relationships and things like that. And so I think and that worked in the Phantom Thread, more Phantom Thready kind of theme, but the re-edit is a lot more geared towards the thriller elements. I think I would have liked to have had the just more creepiness in the house, just a little bit more uncanniness and kind of
unsettling
hearing things at night, and because the moment actually, so in one of the opening scenes of the movie, right after they get back from the restaurant, and then he goes upstairs from the couch and she's in the kitchen and walks by the vent and hears the chains. That scene is actually in the original cut like 50 minutes into the movie. Like that happens right before the morning that she goes into the basement. But I decided to move that scene way forward, and actually works. Like there's nothing in it that would signify that it was, shot later or set later. But I moved that forward because I was like, I need to establish these more frightening elements just more up front.
It's extremely difficult. Yeah, it's extremely difficult, and it's why people at like Hitchcock are so revered for it when you're good at it consistently to maintain and even kind of ratchet tension that's enjoyable for an audience to watch and experience is such a tightrope because you're dealing with something that's unsettling, right? I mean, by the very nature of the fact that it's tension, it's an unpleasant experience in your body physically, that anxiety. It's causing anxiety in the audience, right? And to play that negative emotion in a way that's actually enjoyable for the audience is challenging, and to be able to maintain it and to manipulate it,
Yeah. Well, there's two things on that difficult. Too. Is that I remember right after we actually finished shooting the film, when I was kind of editing it, I rewatched Psycho. And Psycho's one of my favorite movies. I've seen it a million times, but I hadn't seen it in quite a while. And there was even like bits of Psycho that I wish I had kind of used in it, which is just that, making Peter a little bit more of a psycho, like actually having him twist that knife a little bit more, and rather than sort of appearing like a relatively normal guy, that like as she gets back with him, that like, oh, something is snapped with him, and there's kind of that side of him kind of comes out, and I think that that's one thing I would have liked. But even the second thing I wanted to say was that when it came to that basement scene, the moment that I show up again, when I'm like
you're down there,
I'm in my underwear,
right.
Like what I wanted was actually Sammy, the guy,
which is, by the way, because people can't see it, but that is actually how you do every podcast episode.
Yes,
I wasn't surprised at all to see you dressed like that.
No, that's just covered in blood, and
yeah. I mean, that's like we don't release video of this; it's just audio. But anyway, so just so the audience knows, I mean, this is just normal you.
Yeah, if you see the movie, that's what I look like. Yeah,
you probably just jumped from behind the camera, right? You're directing, you're shooting. You just
I actually did direct most of the scene like that. But that scene was. That scene was a late addition. So I had shot the movie. That was a reshoot. Yeah. Because I realized that like the basement scene worked, and everyone who had seen the movie and at the premiere and stuff was like, they loved the basement scene, and that was all the feedback I got was about that it was really well done. Yeah. And so I was like, well, I feel like I want to expand that, and my first preference was to have Sam come back and have him be the guy that is chained up in the basement and found, but he was traveling somewhere, so he was unavailable. So I was like, okay, well, I played the jogger earlier on, so I'll just say that's who's down there. And again, it's one of those things that like I could only afford about 2 hours to rent the location.
Yeah.
So we had 2 hours to shoot both that entire sequence.
So difficult.
Not the full basement sequence, but just the point that I come back. And so ideally I would have been chained up somewhere or in a cage or something like that, and we would have made a bigger show of that. But on the inverse though, I actually kind of do think that one of the scarier moments in the movie, and I edited it so I don't really get like scared of it, but one of the moments that I think is scarier is when she turns on the flashlight and I'm just there. I feel like that's kind of a startling.
It's a good jump. It's a good jump scare. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think you should be proud of it. I think it's a really fun film. I don't think I've seen the other cut. I might be interested.
No, I don't think. I think this is the first one that you've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first one I've seen, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But it sounds like you said that the full cut is on your website. Do you want to give that address again, just so people can check that out?
Yeah, so it's postromopictures.com.
Okay.
Postromo is spelt like the Joseph Conrad novel Nostromo, but with a P instead.
There you go. Excellent. So yeah, if anybody wants to check out that or just like other content that you've got on your website, they can do that. But yeah, well, it's fun. It's fun to get a chance to kind of compare two similar films, especially when one of the authors of one of those films is here with us today, which is you. So that's extremely fun.
Funny talking about a lot of this stuff because it's been it's been over a year and a half since we actually shot it and all that.
Yeah.
So
well, let's end with this. So, especially for the aspiring filmmakers who might be listening out there, share with us, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Share with us, like, what do you think was the most significant thing you learned from having gone through the process of writing, directing, and post on this picture? And I think this is your first feature, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So first feature. So what did you learn? What was the most significant thing you feel like you took away from this experience?
This actually is a easier question to answer than I would have expected, but because I've actually shot my second feature at this point, have more faith in being personal, I think is my biggest advice.
And when you say personal, do you mean in the content?
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean. Yeah.
So Daylight Again was again shot obviously really no budget, and I was so focused on making it as efficient as possible to shoot. I shot listed it meticulously. I wanted because we had no time to do a lot of stuff. I was like, nothing can go wrong, and nothing did go wrong. The shoot was actually really, really smooth, and everyone had a great time. And which is not a lot of first features that have no budget turn out like that. And so I was really proud of that. But I think now, having done that and knowing that I can do that, I have so much more faith in myself as a director that I know I can make bigger choices, be more personal with it. I don't have to worry about it just being marketable and getting out there and being like an easy to digest kind of audience thing. That I feel like I can shot list less meticulously, that I can show up on set and make those decisions on set, and because I know I can make them now. Yeah. So I think, be personal. Like, don't be afraid to, even if you are meticulously shot listing, don't be afraid to make bold choices and kind of have faith in yourself that you can pull those off, rather than just simplifying everything to the nth degree, and kind of making it very efficient and shootable. Yeah. Because that was definitely what I was prioritizing.
Gotcha.
And I look at it now and I'm like, I wish, I would have made a million different choices if I had shot that movie now, knowing what I know from shooting it the first time. So,
and I think that's common. I think that's, it's like you kind of, I think in any art form, right, you have to kind of have the groundwork of just the bare logistics, right? You kind of have to get the craft down. You have to get the bones of what's going on under, get it down, get it in your bones so that you can do it. And then the layer on top of that is, okay, next step is, all right, my voice. How do I express myself? What am I saying, right? And everything from your writing to your shot list to your to allowing the uniqueness of you to now come through in your work, because
the last thing I'll say. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because you know how to get your day right. Now that you know you can get your day every day, and you're doing well with that.
Exactly.
Now,
and we always, and the other thing too, exactly. We came in ahead of schedule like 9 out of 10 times. So I know that I can take a little bit more time to do more. But the last thing I will say to tie it all up is that I have never had a more visceral experience in a movie theater than when she opened that door and saw the labyrinth in the basement. And I was like, oh my God, this is Daylight Again. Like, I initially thought it a little bit. I was like, oh, this is funny. It's two people in a house and all that. And then she opens that door to the basement and I was like, oh my God, it's really going to do this now. And it was just the most, like, I was completely bought into the movie for the rest of it. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. All right, man. Well, everybody out there listening, as always, thank you so much for listening to us babble on about movies for an hour and 21 minutes here. We appreciate you. We hope you enjoyed it. Cullen, as always, I had a blast, and I get to pick film for next time.
Yes, you do.
So we'll see what that will be. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a safe couple weeks. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.